So I'm back here again on my favorite back roads. The last time I was here was in Porsche 911 GT3. That car is probably 4 times as expensive, way more powerful and way more grippy, and I had a lot of fun going through these turns. But now I'm in an ND Miata, and so far I'm not having any less fun. There's less grip, less power, but the chassis balance is there. The steering is hyper responsive. This is steering on Red Bull. The closest thing you can get to this level of steering response is probably in a Lotus Exige or Elise. But unlike the Lotus, this car, the Miata, is a real car. It's got all the comforts and conveniences, and you're not in a tin can. This is a really nice sports car, sophisticated, polished driving experience. Loading into the corners, you can feel the chassis balance come alive. You can feel every millimeter that the tires deflect or flex under load. The throttle and steering are not just directional change devices, they're tools to control your cornering attitude and control the tension in the chassis. It's a lot of fun. It's very, very interactive. This is all the reasons, all the ingredients that make a fun and good driver's car. You don't need a lot of power, you don't need a lot of grip, you just need to get the basics right. And in the Miata, Mazda has spent all the technology, all the development, all the resources on the basics and getting them just so harmonious. As far as the car's attitude goes, this car is a lot tenser and more aggressive and much more go, go, go than the previous gen. The NC was always a little bit laid back, a little bit Netflix and chill. This car is not Netflix and chill. This car is an absolute race car by comparison. And that's a lot down to the powertrain, the engine and the transmission. There's a rifle bolt gearbox with a super tightly spaced ratios and super tightly spaced gearing feel. It's one of the best shifters I've ever driven. The throttle response, the pedal travel is really short and snappy, and it encourages you to go full throttle all day long. The pedals are perfectly spaced for heel to toe downshifts. Here we go, I'm hitting the brakes down to third, heel toe downshift right there. I have a buddy of mine who says you cannot heel toe downshift on a street car on the street. That is not true. I just did it for you. There's one thing that the Miata does well, unlike any vehicle in the world, it's its dynamic range of fun. You can have a lot of fun doing anything in this car. You could be going slowly or quickly, it really doesn't matter. At all commitment levels, you're getting a chassis that is truly engaging and rewarding. If you're going for it, for maximum thrills, it'll do it just fine and you'll have tons of fun. But even if you back it down to about 5/10s or 6/10s, just cruise around in corners, enjoy the scenery, enjoy the shifting, enjoy the road, you will still have a lot of fun engaging this chassis. That's because that slightly soft chassis also produces a lot of feel. It's something that Mazda has always engineered into the cars. It's something that's very much lost in the competition. It's a level of sophistication that you won't find in the FRS or BRZ. Those cars you really have to hoon about and really give it all to have fun. Get those cars sliding and they're a great time, but if you're not sliding, going maximum 10/10s, those cars tend to be a little bit inert, and the same can be said for every modern sports car out there. And you get a great sensation of speed. You're into the surroundings, you're part of the scenery. It's the same reason we really enjoy sport bikes, because you're out in the open, you're not in a cage. The Mazda has always done a great job of that, and now you combine it with some meaningful performance and grip upgrades and this wonderfully direct steering ratio that gives you millimeter precise adjustments and a lot of confidence, no floatiness at all, but ultimately one of the most responsive and pointy steering systems you can get at any price. For a car enthusiast to go through twisties in this car is almost a religious experience. I'm having an epiphany right now. Why are we spending so much time, effort, money, and our own resources chasing horsepower and grip and exotic appeal when something costing just 35 grand in Canada for this mid-level GS model can bring such a big smile on my face, can really give me everything I truly enjoy about driving? But that's not to say it's not without some dynamic criticisms. This engine really doesn't lack for power or response, but it's not the smoothest thing out there. It's not the most satisfying in upper revs. It's a little bit hoarse, it's a bit of a sewing machine. Same can be said of the FRS and BRZ, and it doesn't mean that this engine in Miata lacks for power or response. It really doesn't. It's got all the response, all the sharpness, and all the feel that you could ask for or need. It is charismatic, but it's charismatic in the way a chainsaw is charismatic. It's mechanical, slightly industrial sounding, But in terms of as a tool to get the most out of a chassis, get most out of this wonderful world-class steering and wonderful world-class body control and cornering balance, that's all you really need. It's a great tool. Think of the engine as a tool, not so much as a musical instrument. I think if I were to be perfectly honest with you, I think we're nearing the end for driving thrills for people like you and me. Car enthusiasts that love to be engaged and love to roll their own gears and do their own driving as opposed to having a robot autonomously shuttle us around. That kind of driving thrill is almost over. Self-driving fun is at the end of its life. And the fact that Mazda has given us such a wonderful car towards the end of the car is a real treat. Spiritually speaking, I think this is much more a direct descendant of the original NA Mazda Miata than the NB second or NC third generation that came after it. And the reason I say that is that the NB and NC were better cars than the original NA, but they weren't necessarily better Miatas. The original Miata was wonderful because it involved the driver and it engaged him or her at very low speeds and made you do everything in slow motion. It was like driving Max Payne in slow motion bullet time. You get that same feeling here in the ND, much more so than the NB or NC. The NB and NC were good cars, but they were distractions. They weren't the true sequel. This is a true sequel. This is Miata 2.0. There's something to be said about a car that takes you back to the basics, but does so in a way that no manufacturer other than Mazda can do, and that is give you maximum thrill at any velocity, at any commitment level. You're smiling the moment you get into this car, and they have embraced this lightweight engineering like no other manufacturer, short of maybe Lotus. But unlike Lotus, this is a real car that meets all the modern safety and conveniences and emissions regulations. And it's got the technology if you want it. You move up to the GS or GT trim, you have all the touchscreen navigation, HMI controls, connectivity that you could possibly want. For me, I'm perfectly happy buying the base model at 31 grand, and it's probably the deal of the century if you ask me. It is one hell of an automobile.